up and pay teachers in a very timely manner so that we have a very smooth flow of examination marking and supervising in subsequent years. Honorable Speaker, we call out on the ministry, on the Kenya National Examination Council to pay these supervisors, center managers, and invigilators within the shortest time possible, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
I support.
Education, Majority Leader, that is a matter that you should, in effect, take up. The money is paid by students. It is ring-fenced. It's for printing exams, transporting exams, paying invigilators, paying markers. It is not money from a budget from this house. It is not money from the exchequer. It is ring-fenced money. Why do they delay paying them? I think it should be taken up at your level to find out why this happens. You know, each one of us here has a relationship with a teacher. You are either taught by a teacher, you're a son of a teacher, you're a brother of a teacher, a sister of a teacher, or your campaign manager was a teacher. I would direct you, Majority Leader, don't leave it to the education chairman, take it up yourself and bring us a response, a comprehensive statement, not only about the unpaid bills, but future conduct of examinations in relation to this matter. Thank you. Next, yourself now.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Most obliged. I will make sure we get a statement from the Kenya National Examinations Council and the Ministry of Education, because as you rightly say, students have already paid for these exams. Most of those in private schools, as you remember, during the 2017 campaigns, the then President Uhuru Kenyatta committed that all students in public schools would have their examinations paid for by the government of Kenya. So I probably want to believe maybe his exchequer challenges on the public sector schools. But we will get a formal and comprehensive statement to give next week or latest the week after Tuesday. Now to the usual Thursday statement. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the House Business Committee, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 44-2A to give the Thursday statement on the House Business Committee scheduling of work for the week commencing next week. Honorable Speaker, with regard to business scheduled for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to continue with the consideration of the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024 and the Basic Education Bill Amendment Bill of 2023 at second reading. Additionally, Honorable Speaker, debate will be undertaken on the following motions, some of which are listed in today's order paper. One is the reconstitution of other lapsed committees. Two, consideration of the report of the National Dialogue Committee and the report of the multi-sectoral working group on the realization of the two-thirds gender principle. Three is report on the public petition on legal recognition and protection of e-hailing motorcycle riders and delivery personnel. And four, report on the state of security in 6 counties of North Rift being Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, West Pokot, Samburu, and Laikipia. Honorable Speaker, I wish to remind the House that following the extension of time granted last week, we ought to conclude with the consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy before the end of next week. And that is especially so for chairs and members of departmental committees that are considering this 2025 debt management strategy. And also, I see the vice chair of the debt committee. I don't see him, Honorable Makali Mulu and Sharia are not in the House, but they are well appraised. I think they have had a committee sitting on the same. And as such, once the liaison committee tables its reports, it will be prioritized for debate in the course of the week, and this will pave the way for consideration of the budget policy statement in the subsequent week. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene again next week, Tuesday, 4th March, to schedule business for the rest of that week. Now I wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. And Honorable Speaker, I know Tuesday we have the funeral service of one of our colleagues, the late Malulu Ijendi. And I know quite a number of members may be planning to attend. Therefore, it will be a light afternoon because we may not all be able to go to Malava and be able to make it back by 2:30. But the House sittings will proceed as usual, and but on light business, Honorable Speaker. And wish all those who will be traveling with us to Malava safe travels. Those who are traveling tomorrow, the day after tomorrow to Baringo, to lay to rest the late Senator for Baringo. Also, Honorable Speaker, this Saturday. And we continue praying for their families as we condole them and pray for them to have the fortitude and strength to continue with their lives, even in the absence of our departed colleagues, their families, and also the constituents of Malava constituency and Baringo County who have lost the members who represent them in this House and in the Senate. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Yes, Ruku.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise on a point of order pursuant to Standing Order 83, then together with the Standing Order 42A5. And the Standing Order 42A5 provides as follows: the Leader of Majority Party shall inform the House of the date, time, and order in which the Cabinet Secretary shall appear to reply to the questions and provide report to the House and committees. Honorable Speaker, I carefully listened to the statement by the Leader of Majority Party on the business for next week, and I did not hear any mention of appearance of a Cabinet Secretary before this House, particularly the Cabinet Secretary for Health. I'm saying so because the country is facing a potential crisis, Mr. Speaker, in the health sector, which with the private hospitals having threatened to cease attending patients under the chair because of failures and resolved concern. Honorable Speaker, while it is the duty of the Ministry of Health to deal with the matters of health, we, the members of Parliament, as the representatives of the people, have found ourselves at the first line of defense, and Kenyans are bashing us for the failures in the health sector. Kenyans think that since we are the ones who passed the laws that transition the NHIF to shift and share, we ought to take responsibility when things don't work, and not the Ministry of Health. Mr. Speaker, when we passed the Social Health Insurance Act and created shift and share, we intended that our people would easily access quality and affordable health care. However, the perennial and unresolved teething issues affecting the transition from NHIF to shift and share is limiting the enjoyment of right of health under the Article 43(1)(a) of the Constitution, and by extension, the right to life under the Article 26 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, I hope that in a statement, the Leader of Majority Party would, as priority, inform us that the Cabinet Secretary of Health would appear before this House next week to address many concerns by Kenyans and the health facilities regarding the service delivery under SHA. Honorable Speaker, I humbly seek your indulgence and direction that the Cabinet Secretary of Health be summoned to this House next week on Wednesday, 5th February 2025, to address many issues affecting the health sector. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Ruku, what you've read appears to be a statement that should have reached my desk for approval. in the guise of a point of order, you've sought a statement. And that is not very honorable. Yes, Majority Leader.
Indeed, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to agree with you that the Honorable Ruku is completely out of order because he seems to be raising a statement under the disguise of other things. First, the Honorable Ruku has not filed any question or request for a statement for the Minister of Health to appear before this House. And the Leader of Majority, in line with our own standing orders, cannot, on his own volition, invite a Cabinet Secretary to come appear here to be questioned by Ruku, Honorable Ruku. I only do that pursuant to Honorable Ruku filing a question or a statement, then I file. The only question that has been filed this sitting on health is by the member for Yatta, the Honorable Robert Basil. And the issues that he wanted addressed were comprehensively addressed by the statement, which was tabled, was it yesterday or the day before, by Honorable Pukose, the chair of the Health Committee. The Honorable Ruku was seated right where he seated when the Honorable Pukose was reading that very comprehensive statement. And I want to believe, probably invite Honorable Ruku, if there are issues, he may get a copy from the table office of the statement that was tabled. And if there is anything that was not addressed, he is at liberty to file a statement or a question that the CS can come and answer. But also, just for information to the House, all the questions and statements that had been sought last year, as you are told, they have all lapsed. We have, with the exception of that one question from the Health Ministry, we have a total of another 22 questions, at least one per ministry, and we are just waiting for the ministers and the departmental committees to finish because, you know, Honorable Speaker, ministers, because of the budget process, making budget process statements, they have been shuttling between this House and the other House. And therefore, as soon as we finish with the BPS, we will schedule ministers. The Minister for Roads has the highest number of questions, which are 3 questions that have already been filed. Other ministries have one question. And again, I thought it was not a very efficient use of time to invite a minister to just come address one issue. So we'll probably just begin with the minister in charge of roads and infrastructure when we finish the budget policy statement. So I invite Honorable Ruku to read the statement by Honorable Pukose. If there are issues that he feels were not addressed by that statement, to raise a question or a statement, and we will occasion the Minister for Health to appear and answer anything else that Honorable Ruku would want answered.
Yes, Ruku?
Honorable Speaker, I listen carefully to the chairman of Departmental Committee of Health, Honorable Pukose. And this matter of health, Mr. Speaker, if it even requires we suspend all the business of this House so that we can be able to get it right as far as health sector is concerned, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Ruku, what you need to do, either file a question, request for a statement, or seek a motion of adjournment as is provided for under the standing orders. And whichever you request, I'll give it consideration. That's how the House functions. Your emotions notwithstanding, the House does not act that way. And I think I've been mentoring you well. You sit with me in my office for many minutes asking me how things are done, and I always tell you. Yes, Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, almost a week ago, you directed us who are the chairs of departmental committees to consider the budget policy statements, which we are currently doing, Mr. Speaker, and we are almost concluding. Mr. Speaker, you've also had the Leader of Majority here giving us the business which is coming up next week, including conclusion of the budget policy statements, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, there is an issue which I want you to address, and also it requires the leadership of the National Assembly led by Kimani Ichung'wah, and probably also the leadership of the Senate, on this, some of these issues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, we met with the Ministry of Water to consider the budget policy statement. And on the same Tuesday, Mr. Speaker, the Senate also wrote to the ministry asking them to appear before the Senate on the same issues of budget policy statement, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, reading Article 95 and 96, the roles of National Assembly and Senate, Mr. Speaker, we don't see where the Senate has come in budget making process. And Mr. Speaker, I don't know, even after summoning the ministries to appear before them, us as departmental committees, when we are done, we present our reports to the Budget and Appropriation Committee, which again, it is transmitted to Treasury. I don't know the Committee of Senate, when they are done interrogating the ministries on the budget policy statement, do they take the reports to, again, to Budget and Appropriation Committee of this House, or where do they take their reports? So there is a confusion, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if there is some other laws which requires the senators to ask the ministries to appear before them on budget making process, I think it is good, Mr. Speaker, that we harmonize those laws, and also maybe the leadership of both the houses, the National Assembly and the Senate, so that where that is possible, we can do a joint sitting between the National Assembly Departmental Committee and the Senate. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it's really very confusing that we are calling the same ministry to appear before us on a budget policy statement, and the senators, again, they are calling on the same. I don't know where they come in. So I'm seeking your direction as our Speaker and also as the Chair of Parliamentary Service Commission. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Who is that? Which member is that? Kirima, I can't see you properly. Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. As I joined to what has been said by my colleague, the Parliament is so much insist of the situation of Article 95 and 96. This is a matter which has been coming before this House a number of times, because as a country, we are pursuing the policy of austerity measures to make sure that we cut costs on unnecessary expenses. The law as it is, Mr. Speaker, sir, can this House spare itself and come out clearly and also advise the executive, because I believe the problems we are undergoing is that it's being entertained by the authorities and those with the powers to execute and implement the Constitution as it is. For the Senate has really assumed the role of this House, duplicating committees, calling committees or calling the agencies and the departments which are not supposed to be appearing before them, and trying to create work which does not exist for themselves, for they are supposed even to be meeting only 2 times per year, only to deliberate on revenue allocation between the central government and the county government. Can it come out clearly? Because there is a lot of confusion in all aspects. Let's come even to marking of where we are parking cars. You find that it's marked, and it's possible it's through the advice of the chairman of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Senators no law even to go and park down there, for they are supposed to be oversighting the county governments, and they shouldn't be seen there more than here. We are bringing them here to live in Nairobi and to work in Nairobi and to work in Nairobi, yet their work is up country. So, Speaker, sir, what my colleague is saying is that something or someone is duplicating work and it's upon us to cut the costs. Are we cutting costs by doing double work by the same Parliament? Speaker, I'm calling upon the House, especially the Executive and the Parliamentary Service Commission led by the Speaker of this House, to see to it that we are not duplicating work anymore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I think the issue raised by Honorable Kangogo Bowen is quite important. But just as a way of direct answer to Honorable Bowen, the Senate has a role on BPS. but their role is restricted to just one ministry, the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, because they have a role on consideration of the debt management, since debt also touches on counties, and they also have a role on BPS on the matter of division of revenue, because the division of revenue bill is a bill that you all know comes to this house and also goes to the other house. So they have a role. The question, Honorable Speaker, is, and I know, Honorable Speaker, you're a former senator, so I'll be very cautious with my words. But I was just wondering, has it taken the Senate too long to acclimatize themselves with the new constitution and know where their roles are and where their mandate goes up to? Because we have absolutely no problem with the Senate calling or summoning the Minister for Finance to deal with the debt management strategy paper, or even to deal on BPS on matters to do with the division of revenue bill. However, looking at, I just got a copy from the Honorable Kangogo Bowen, signed by the clerk of the Senate, inviting the Minister, the Cabinet Secretary for Water, Engineer Eric Muga, to appear before the committee on Tuesday 25th, on Tuesday 4th March at 11:30 a.m. The agenda of the meeting is to deliberate on the proposed policies, programs, and expenditure ceilings of the state departments under the ministry's purview. The ministries, not the county governments. 2, the implementation status of the financial year 24-25 budget as at 31st December 2024. And Honorable Speaker, just looking at the entire agenda, it is actually misplaced, because this is work that should be done by the Departmental Committee for Water and Irrigation of the National Assembly. And I want to agree with the Honorable Kerema, it is not just a waste of public resources, but a waste of valuable time of honorable senators and more valuable time of the Cabinet Secretary. But I want to speak to the Cabinet Secretaries, Honorable Speaker. If you are a Cabinet Secretary and you have 2 invitations, one by the Departmental Committee that oversights you and your ministry, and one from another house that oversights governors and county governments, you have a choice to decide where to appear and to know which side of your bread is buttered. You must know which house can impeach and which house cannot impeach you. And that should make it very easy for any Cabinet Secretary who has an invitation from Senate and from the National Assembly on matters BPS, or indeed any other matter. The people who oversight you, the people's representatives, leave alone the those who represent counties, those who represent the people, when they summon you, have your priorities right. So I would advise this particular Cabinet Secretary, if he has an invitation from the Committee of the National Assembly on Water and Irrigation, and he has another one from the Senate, I am being told to repeat, Honorable Speaker, with your indulgence, if a Cabinet Secretary, particularly this one who has a letter dated 25th February, if you have an invitation from the Departmental Committee oversighting you as a Cabinet Secretary of the national government, not a CEC of a county government somewhere, of the national government, the National Assembly, and the Senate, please just know which side of your bread is buttered and appear before the house that oversights you. Give it priority over any other house. They can spend their time as they wish. We cannot dictate how they spend their time, Honorable Speaker. But I think to close it, Honorable Speaker, we must tell the executive, especially on matters touching on budget processing, priority must be in the National Assembly. And it's not because we want to fight with our colleagues. You know, Honorable Speaker, we have the intention, because you are a former senator and you have led us well, yourself and the Speaker of the Senate, in having a consultative process so that we do not have squabbles between us and the other house. Honorable Speaker, I've had even the issues you had members raise here yesterday on RMLF. Honorable Speaker, it is not that these members control any funds, and members of Parliament do not want to control even a single shilling or even a cent of the roads maintenance funds but we are just protecting our constitutional mandate to oversight national government institutions like Kera, Kura, Kenha, because that is our mandate. And we have not asked for money to go to members of parliament. And I have never had any member of parliament asking for money to go to them, because they don't manage CRC money. It is managed independently by the regional managers in charge of Kura, Kera, Kenha, and they have their procurement teams that procure. Members of parliament have nothing to do with the roads funds. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it's not that we want to pick quarrels with anyone. We do not want to pick quarrels, but we must remain truthful to our constitution. And I want to believe senior counsel, Tienda Omolo, will agree with me, because he was among the drafters of this constitution, Honorable Speaker. And I can see him raising up his hand, so I rest my case to be held by the senior counsel.
Tienda Omolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority, who almost became the leader of minority, has reminded us that you are a former senator, which is true. But I am sure, for now, your allegiance to the Senate is historical, but your allegiance to this House is present, and it carries the day. Mr. Speaker.
And my allegiance to the law and the Constitution is permanent.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but on that must be tried on an hourly basis. Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by the Honorable Kagogo Bowen goes beyond what he has raised, the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, it goes to the jurisdiction of the Houses of Parliament. And I think, and I want to urge you, Mr. Speaker, that you issue an authoritative communication, at least from this House, founded on Article 94, Article 95, because what I have noticed is a situation of overreaching. It is not just that committee. There are many times, there are many committees in which we serve where a particular government department is supposed to attend, and then we are told there is a simultaneous invitation by another committee of the Senate. And if you examine keenly, you cannot see the nexus between that committee and the work of the counties and the jurisdiction of the Senate. For this House, I believe we have endeavored to confine ourselves to our jurisdiction. When the Constitution says we have no role in the impeachment of governors, this House has never tried to play a role. We watch from afar like the rest of Kenyans. When the Constitution says that in the impeachment of the president or the deputy president, our role is limited to initiation, and we are not the trial chamber, we have restricted ourselves to that initiation. Something that many Kenyans do not understand. When I was out there, many Kenyans were telling me, but how come in the National Assembly you did not give the erstwhile deputy president the opportunity to defend himself? You did not allow lawyers to come, because they do not understand that ours is restricted to initiation. The Senate is the trial chamber, and we respect that. Reciprocally, the Senate must respect where the jurisdiction lies in the National Assembly. Failure to do so results first in creating difficulties for government to work, because government ministers and PSS and other officials are permanently being invited to the two houses of parliament so that they cannot even do their work. Secondly, it results in a very dangerous situation where you could have one house of parliament making a recommendation A and the other house making the opposite recommendation. And the ultimate effect is to reduce the final effect of parliament as parliament. And that should not be allowed to happen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it must be remembered that when a committee of this House, just like the Senate, summons an officer of government, they have the powers of the court. But that committee must address itself to why it is given the powers of the court. You cannot have a criminal court summoning someone on an environmental matter, and vice versa. So even the committees of the Senate and the Senate as Senate must first address and ask itself, is this within our power, before we assume the powers of the court? Mr. Speaker, I do wonder that, we have many litigants. Some people call them busybodies, but I do not call them that. We encourage people to go to court. But this free court-going persons. I have never known why they've never challenged the assumption of jurisdiction by the Senate on matters that do not belong to them. But until they do so, Mr. Speaker, I think the commencement point
Many of them are either vexatious or surrogates.
Yes, indeed, many are surrogates. And many are inspired by things other than respect for the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that the starting point to bring sanity is an authoritative communication from you. And that will even help some of these government ministers and PSS because they do not know where to go for refuge. If they get something like that, they might rely on it and say, we had this communication from the National Assembly, and then it is up to the Senate or anybody else to challenge it in court. I so submit, Mr. Speaker.
Kenan.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that Honorable Otieno Amolo, who was part of the drafters of the current constitution, I believe still has some of the notes that led to the inclusion of the Senate in the current constitution, Mr. Speaker. The Senate that I had in mind, the Senate that came later on towards the tail end of the sitting we have had in Naivasha, and the Senate that I see right now are completely different. And luckily, I'm speaking from experience, because the Senate that we have had in the first Bombers draft, the Senate that ultimately that will help in including the current constitution, and the Senate that I see are completely different. The only thing that brings this to the fore, Mr. Speaker, there is an attempt to illegally create a constitutional niche that doesn't exist for the Senate. The Senate is our house. It's one of the houses of Parliament. You can be here today as a member of the National Assembly. Tomorrow you'll be a senator. We do not want to badmouth them. It's our house. You have been there. It's a respectable house. But I think one thing that we will not accept is to create an avenue for chaos. The technical people at the ministries, whether they are PSs, CSs, and COs, Mr. Speaker, are operating in a very difficult environment. And I'm glad that the leader of majority today has spoken about this. Mr. Speaker, it is the high time that we ask the Senate to be accountable to the Constitution and to the rule of law. And that is not, Mr. Speaker, a sign of weakness. It's a sign of nobility and adherence to the rule of law. If today, by the grace of God, Mr. Speaker, even in our own villages, the person who has the power of the purse, the person who has the power of firing, the person who has the power is the ultimate authority, even in our homes. And therefore, the National Assembly, you have the power of the purse. You have the power to sack and fire. The only thing that is missing, Mr. Speaker, is the flair. And the leader of majority, Mr. Speaker, I want to address him, Mr. Speaker, because he is the appointing of the fear of the unknown. Somebody outside there runs away with your mandate. When they run away with your mandate, we run around and say the Senate has run away with our mandate. We want the chairs of committees. Don't be afraid of the leader of majority. Don't be afraid of the leader of minority. Don't be afraid of the whip. Function in line with the mandate of that committee. Even where you want to assist the government, Mr. Speaker, you can still do it within the confines of your mandate. But here we are, Mr. Speaker, today, even issues that are within the confines of the National Assembly committees are being adjudicated, Mr. Speaker, in the Senate, simply because our members have failed to discharge their mandate. That must be addressed. Mr. Speaker, the other bit. You see right now this house is being bashed. And I'm glad that you are here. You have seen it. You have been a senator. You have been in the judiciary. You have been in the executive. You are now here. Tomorrow, God knows what you will be. It is the high time that you guide these houses, Mr. Speaker. Guide these houses to a path, a constitutional path that will respect the mandate of the Senate, that will also respect the mandate of the National Assembly, that will not create. I know over the last 2 years, you have been attempting to avoid that jurisdictional conflict between the Senate and the National Assembly. But this must be reciprocated, Mr. Speaker. It's not coming. I know you have tried. I know there is a bill. What we are approaching right now, Mr. Speaker, is madness. We expect respect. We expect reciprocity. We expect tolerance from our colleagues so that whoever is a senator also knows that there are colleagues here who have the constitutional mandate to do certain things. Mr. Speaker, finally, on this, we have gone through this constitution for the last 10 years. You remember when we were passing, we said 80% was a good constitution. And I remember the words that we used, 20% were lethal. It is time to dissect, go through the 20% that is not helping us in any way, and do away with it and make a constitutional change. Honorable Otiende Amolo and the other legal brains and many others should come forward and bring an amendment. It's not cowardice. It's not naivety to bring those amendments so that we have a country that is run in line with the constitutional provision and everybody respects the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. I beg to submit that this thing, just as the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has said, the CSCs and the other groups outside there, if you are being forced to execute an illegal mandate, refuse, nothing will happen to you. And that is where we are headed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the same issue?
Yes, Honorable Speaker. First and foremost, Honorable Speaker, it's interesting to have you preside over when the Senate is being discussed, having served in that house. That really shows a lot of comfort and the independence of institutions. Honorable Speaker, the formation of devolution set out different responsibilities and roles in different structures of governance. And the mandates of each house in the bicameral parliament, Honorable Speaker, is clear in the Constitution of Kenya. I saw yesterday, Honorable Speaker, a senator in the floor of the House use very serious derogatory words, vulgar words, Honorable Speaker, against a minister for failure to appear, for failure to appear before their committee on matters budget policy statements. Honorable Speaker, what, after appearing as a minister before a committee in the Senate, then what? What next? The House of the Senate has no single responsibility as far as budget making process is concerned, Honorable Speaker. That is what came out very clear yesterday, that perhaps they do not know their responsibility when they are equipped with immense work under the counties. Honorable Speaker, I look at it from in a layman's point of view, Honorable Speaker, that while the national government is supposed to, or the National Assembly is supposed to call upon matters on national security, the Senate, alongside with the county assembly, Honorable Speaker, should be calling the members, the county askaris, Honorable Speaker, to ask what happens in the counties. Because what happens as far as devolution is concerned, Honorable Speaker, is bad to say the least. Yesterday we had a discussion, Honorable Speaker. There is war between, the governors have an issue with the National Assembly. The Senate has an issue with the National Assembly. Some independent bodies have an issue with the National Assembly. What is this that the National Assembly is not doing right, that the members of the Senate and every other section of government has an issue with? That is why you see also, Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Governors, in conjunction with the Senate, pushing that we have some funds that are under the RMLF fund move to the county government. When you all know that it is members of parliament and even the members of the public, that you'll need a microscope, Honorable Speaker, to see what the county governments are doing. While everything that is done by CDF is visible in full glare of the people, Honorable Speaker. But you'll need a microscope. And I said here yesterday that, Honorable Speaker, at one point you will see governors, Honorable Speaker, and these I've said in several occasions, moving around in a convoy of 50 vehicles, Honorable Speaker, some 20, some 15 vehicles, Honorable Speaker, that one carries a chair, another one carries a carpet, another one carries goons, another one carries the girlfriends, another one chairs. Honorable Speaker, the Senate should be focusing on that. They should be summoning governors and ask them such questions. Why that is happening, Honorable Speaker? Not interfering with the work of the National Assembly, acting ultra-virus beyond their limit, beyond their work, when we are supposed, Honorable Speaker, to have distinct roles. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, we have several matters in court. When we pass legislations here, you see the Senate going to court very, very fast, Honorable Speaker. And I must thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the mediation process that you've been doing between the National Assembly and the Senate. But you'll see them every time and then, time and again, going to court on the matters that we pass in this floor. Any time that we pass or we act beyond our mandate, they go to court. Do they also want us to go to court? We implore upon the cabinet secretaries to ignore some of these summons and know where their place is. Their place is in the National Assembly. When the Senate wants to ask ministers questions, they should call upon the CECs in Nairobi, the CECs in Kajiado, the CECs in Mombasa, and ask them questions. They should have actually called the CEC of Environment in Nairobi to ask them why their government littered a road, Honorable Speaker, and blocked the Kenya Power offices, the Steamer Plaza. That is their role. It is just, I don't know why the framers of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, framed it to appear like the Senate is in the upper house, Honorable Speaker, when it is clear that their responsibility is to engage with the county governments, the county askaris. While we call the Inspector General of Police, they should call the county inspectorate with the arungus. When we call the ministers here, they should be busy calling the CECs. When we call anything to do with matters that touch on the national health matters, they should be focusing on calling the clinic officers from the dispensaries. That is where their limits are. They should know their jurisdiction and not interfere with this, Honorable Speaker. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Elaji. We'll finish there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
After
Mr. Speaker,
Elaji Ocheng, then we close.
sometimes it's very sad for Kenya. Because, you know, when Kenyans were passing this constitution, Mr. Speaker, they thought that when we have two houses and we have county governments, we'll have reduced poverty, we'll have rebuilt our country, Kenya. But it seems every human being, including me, you, Mr. Speaker, when we were in the 13th Parliament, in the Senate, I think I want to thank that Senate because they tried their best to build the foundation of how we can work together in this constitution and ensure the Senate goes within the roles that the Constitution has clearly represented in front and told us this is what we are supposed to do in that dispensation. And the National Assembly should do their role within what the Constitution has clearly indicated. But then now we find the Senate that we have now faces this challenge because most of them are young. The Senate House where I was is a place where you must have wisdom on how a country has, not in competition, but to have wisdom for the country to move forward. But today the senators that we have are senators that are supposed to be in this National Assembly. This is their house. That house needs a very different crop. People who have been in this house, who have seen everything that has happened in the country, are supposed to be in the Senate to help navigate where we are now. Today we are in more poverty because also the governors, most of them come from this house and they go become governors. Because even if you tell me they are carrying seats, they are carrying this, you have just come from this house, why can't you be a bit different and do something better? The best, I will go back to what Honorable Karoli Omondi said, it is time we change the Constitution, especially in terms of division of revenue, that monies must be divided in the counties to the constituencies. Then we shall give them 10% or 20 or 30 for the administration. The rest must go to development. So I want to tell the Senate also, in all these things after you have done, have you asked yourself, in all your reports in 1 year, what have you delivered? After you have gone through a CS, you have gone through all the questions you are asking, you have gone through the media, the deliverance of that is critical. What is this output that you can put on the table and say, it came from the Senate and we have now changed something from the national government and it's functional.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I will just request you in a humble way. It is time, again, you sit with the Speaker of the Senate. Let us have a harmony. If you are talking about broad-based and all this, I think the Senate must understand what is broad-based because now we want development. We are tired of these dramas, Mr. Speaker. I beg you to just ask for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, the issue dealing with, for me, are both structural, legal, and sometimes have also been fueled by the courts. I've said here, and I want to repeat, Mr. Speaker, that in the US, for over 200 years now, there's no single time when the courts have agreed to preside over any matter taken either by the House of Reps against the Senate or vice versa. Over 200 years, every time the courts have been asked to preside over any matter between these two, the courts have said, no, these are your matters, deal with them. So, Speaker, in 2013, when the first Senate was inaugurated, so many people ran for senator, only to come to Senate and realize that this is not what they wanted to do. And that's why you saw most of them now running to run for governor. It's because people who run for Senate never understand what the role of Senate is. Most of them, Mr. Speaker. Most of them don't. And that's why they come in and within 2-3 years, they either want to do National Assembly work or they want to be governors. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to also do civic education so that those who run for Senate know what they're going into. They should not come to Senate, then realize that, oh, it's only about counties, not about the whole country and all these things. I think we have an issue there that causes problems whenever senators come in and they realize that their job is limited to this particular issue. Mr. Speaker, personally, I've been very impressed by the way you've handled the issue of Senate since you became Speaker. You've tried to steer this House toward that direction. That let's not bash Senate, let's not talk to them as if they are not our brothers. But at some point in terms of Speaker, you will have to put your foot down and say that this is where we draw the line. We will not allow Senate to keep on belittling this House every time in their chambers, Mr. Speaker. It's nauseating. We can't have every single week Senate bashing this Assembly as if there's something we've done to them. Nothing. Mr. Speaker, I want to request you to sit down with your colleague on the other side and let's have some decorum. Let's have a way of dealing, because we are all adults. We all work within the law. It can't go on ad infinitum. That personally, Mr. Speaker, you've appointed me now twice to a committee called Mediation Committee. And whenever we go there, Mr. Speaker, we deal with very mundane issues. Issues of ego. Issues of who is big and who is small. Not law, Mr. Speaker. And unless this is sorted out through maybe amendment of Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it will rely upon you as our Speaker to guide us. But I want to implore upon the senators that know your limits, know what the rule says about you as Senate, so that we don't get in confusion every now and then, Mr. Speaker. I beg.
I'll give you direction in due course on this issue, either next week or week after. I've closed that, my club. Honorable members, I want to acknowledge in the Speaker's gallery Michinda Boys Secondary School from Molo, Nakuru. In the public gallery, Voice of Kibra students from Kibra, Nairobi. Mailwa Comprehensive School from Kajiado Central, Kajiado. And Mitoone Day Secondary School from Buri, East Meru. On my behalf and on behalf of the House, we welcome all the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 8, the Gold Processing Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2023, second reading question to be put.
Members on their feet, take your seats. The unlawful Kamukunji there, disband and take your seats. Is that a member for, that's not Coimbra, is it? No. Honorable members, I now put the question at order number 8, which is that the Gold Processing Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2023 be now read a second time. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the establishment, composition, functions and management of the Gold Processing Corporation, provide for the application, cancellation and renewal of a gold processing license and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2024, second reading, resumption of debate.
At order number 9, resumption of debate. Records show Honorable Mulanya is in the House. He had 9 minutes to go. He's not in the House. He forfeits his slot. Beatrice Elachi, are you queuing for the police bill?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this amendment bill on the National Police Commission. Mr. Speaker, when I look at what Honorable Masara has done, and I want to thank him, is to now look at the mental health of the police that we are having. And in his memorandum of objects and reasons, he says that the bill recognizes that in the execution of their tasks, police officers work in potentially confusing roles, alternating between law enforcement and public service. And Mr. Speaker, I want to pick the issue of public service. You see, sometimes I know we have really vilified this sector, and especially anyone who asks for a job to be a police officer. And all over the world, if there is a sector that is respected so much, is what and the work that our police officers do every day. And Mr. Speaker, you find sometimes it's very sad the way sometimes we treat our police. Yes, I know individually you'll find others with a lot of challenges, definitely in terms of how they deal with issues. But that does not mean that now we look at the sector and demonize it until we wonder whether these are our brothers, our sisters, and they are the ones who have taken these jobs. They come from our families. And so today, as we talk about mental health, I think they are the most affected in this sector. I know they have challenges of even their salaries. They are the salaried civil servants who I know today are also struggling in the issues that we have, based also teachers. But one thing that I'll remember is the former CS of gender, Margaret Kobia. Margaret Kobia had started a very good program post-COVID to ensure all civil servants will have a place where they can go when they are stressed in a wellness unit. And she started this unit. And I'm hoping in civil service today, this unit is functional. Because it was supposed to help every civil servant that has a challenge, that feels is stressed, to go and talk to someone just to have their counseling. And that's what the police also needs, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, today I know there are many other challenges. You see, when you say you have a force that takes care of us, and you find even getting uniforms is a challenge, just getting their boots is a challenge, just ensuring that today I wonder whether they have an insurance cover for themselves and families. You wonder whether the work they do we appreciate. It's a very, very sad scenario when you look at this sector. And so as he does this amendment, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we need to really push, even as the National Assembly, is to ensure the environment each police officer is working in is an environment that can be better. I want to thank the Deputy DIG when he was acting, Mr. Speaker. Masengeli was able to try even just to build the promotions. And you would see all of them now getting excited and saying they would wish to work. Because he came in and started. And Kanja has also picked it. They are really trying to see how do we promote officers who came in 10 years, 15 years, and they've never seen a promotion. I would encourage them to continue doing that. But the other thing we need to help in assisting also, even as we talk about this, is their welfare. Today, I'll give you an example, Mr. Speaker. The officers, and I'm just saying as an example, the officers who man State House Gate, for example, remember they are GSUs. And I know they have challenges. And I want to plead even with the controller, that State House controller, to just look at it, look at their children, look at the challenges they are facing in terms of, we have many young children and many young students who live inside State House, but I know they don't know this other side because their fathers are the officers of government, but they can also receive bursaries wherever they are. They are in my constituency, and I feel they deserve to get bursaries. They deserve to get that presidential bursary. And they deserve also, when they go out, to be paid their night outs and on time. I know, I'm not just talking about them now, I'm talking of all that sector. Most of them find it very difficult to get even their night outs in time. And so if we want to see even this civil service coming back and working hard to see a better Kenya, then we must also always have a good way of doing the incentives. So those are some of the things that bring in also these stresses. Honorable Masara is also talking about how the Oversight Authority of the National Commission on Human Rights, the Director of Public Prosecution, or the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, as a case may be, where necessary. The same way, for me, if I'm asked today, the same way the military has its martial courts, why can't we have a martial courts for some of these officers? Mr. Speaker, you realize sometimes in the environment they are working, and you are caught up on exchange of fire, and you are dealing with also people, let us agree, that who are on very high crime also. And so it is important to deal with them, knowing they have been going through a very stressful way of doing these things. And when they find themselves maybe in a situation like that, and they are called by IPOA or whatever, let them be given an environment to explain themselves. I would tell you, Mr. Speaker, you find some of the officers were there protecting lives, but today they have lost their jobs because they protected lives somewhere. And because they don't have that opportunity to come back and get an appeal, to just explain themselves, even if he's going home, let him go home with dignity, having explained and had himself, as Article 50 of the Constitution says. You find, Mr. Speaker, there are some who are very stressed, especially, you remember when you come out of the force from the training, the first places you are taken is in the volatile areas. So you're taken to, let's say, on the borders of Mandera, on the borders of Tana River, where there's very, very high terrorism and all that. And some years ago, you remember, Mr. Speaker, we lost very young officers who had just come from the training and had just entered into Tana River, and all of them were killed by terrorists there. And today we have others who have stayed in those areas even more than 7 to 8 years, Mr. Speaker. They are just begging. We have done our part. We've been here ever since I came out of training. I am here. That person is stressed, needs a place where psychologically can just be supported. And then I am pleading also with the force and the commission. Why we brought in a commission, we thought it will take better care to this force than the days it was without a commission. But then now, when you look at it, Mr. Speaker, I think they are even wondering why they really had the commission now. Because most of their issues are the issues that they are going through, a lot of things. In that balancing and all these things of you balance the promotions, balance the appointments, knowing very well this was a force that one was always on the GSU side and the other one was the police itself. Now we've merged them together, Mr. Speaker. But yeah, there's still competition, intra-competition inside there. And many others, are the lower ones are really suffering on that. So as we look at it, and it is something that Masara is also talking about, that let us try and see if we can promote the values of principle referred to in Article 10 and 232. Mr. Speaker, even today, if we had better forces, today we would be having better values in our constitution. With those few remarks, I beg to support Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable James Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I rise to support this bill, Mr. Speaker. The bill on the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024, whose objective, Mr. Speaker, is to provide for mental wellness and mental well-being of police officers. Mr. Speaker, the issue of mental health among security officers, particularly police officers, is now an acknowledged fact that there is a problem. And this fact has been borne out by what we experience very often. The number of suicides we read in the newspapers that are publicized, the number of homicides, the number of officers that kill their seniors are publicized every day. And those that we read in the papers, Mr. Speaker, are probably just a tip of the iceberg. If some go to the extent that actually they kill themselves and kill their officers, or do both, what is happening to those who are actually suffering silently? What is happening to their families? Because if people are affected mentally, obviously their families suffer. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that needs to address, and therefore this bill comes at the right moment. Mr. Speaker, it is not only the officers that suffer, nor is it their families only that suffer, but Mr. Speaker, the public that they interact with. Mr. Speaker, the handling of people who come into contact with the police is important. Although it is not documented of what happens quietly, but we know sometimes the brutality that the police officers met out. And we may start to think that probably that is how police officers are. But Mr. Speaker, this may be just an expression of mental illness that is not looked at. Because sometimes it looks pathological what they do, and we blame them. But we do not realize that these people may actually be in need of help. It's therefore possible that a number of officers are operating while actually are unwell and in need of mental treatment. Mr. Speaker, we ask ourselves, why is it so that we have officers that we have come to suspect are not well? We just think of some conditions, but they have not really actually been documented. That has not been taken. The magnitude of the problem not been brought out. Mr. Speaker, this bill, if implemented as proposed, may actually address these issues. What is probably obvious, what may be obvious to us, do we do character suitability before we get the police officers into recruitment and into training? And what is the curriculum of their training to protect them from the nature of work that they do? If you look at their working conditions, Mr. Speaker, they work long hours. They work in different conditions. Mr. Speaker, they are actually faced with horrendous circumstances. What they go through, they are often in a life and a death situation. People cannot remain mentally well if every time they are out in operations, their life is in danger. Mr. Speaker, the high tension that they face all the times, the physical trauma that they are actually faced with. Mr. Speaker, we know instances where whole troops of police officers have actually been eliminated. What happens to those who survive? Do they remain well? Mr. Speaker, even what they witness when we call them to crime scenes, they find mutilated bodies. Mr. Speaker, do they remain well? Do they get counseling? Do we do psychoanalysis of what the effect of this are? So this psychological trauma they suffer through is something we need to really look into. The result, Mr. Speaker, is I believe that a lot of our officers are actually working when they actually have severe depression that expresses itself in what we see like homicide or suicide. Now, post-traumatic stress disorder, Mr. Speaker, anybody who is exposed to extreme horrendous conditions, they suffer and they need to be looked after. They need care. Are these available to our officers as it is now? So, Mr. Speaker, I won't be surprised if amongst police officers, you probably have higher incidence of even physical illnesses like high blood pressure. They can develop personality disorders like emotional numbness, psychopathic tendencies, and we'll just blame them without actually realizing that they need care. On top of that, the pay that they get, there's always been an issue of the pay that the police officers get, the houses that they live in. And Mr. Speaker, I'm quite sure that there are no systems that are in place to actually look after them in these concepts. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. The creation, the establishment of psychosocial units and formulation of programs to promote the mental health and well-being of police officers as proposed in Clause 3 is something that actually we must support. To provide them with mental health and wellness resources. I mean, they get well. And you know, mental illness is probably one of the most difficult health conditions to address and most expensive and tends to be chronic once it sets in. Do they have appropriate health facilities that look after that? I know there is a hospital that has been put up for the police officers, but we just see a new building. It has not been operationalized. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the need, as has been put in this bill, that every county should establish a well-equipped centers or offices or camps or in training colleges that deal with this matter is also something I will support. So in all, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I think all our colleagues should support it. And it's not only support it and so that it becomes part of what is available in our legal system, but actually provide the funds that actually look after them, starting with their working conditions, their pay, the psychosocial support, the treatment that they get. It will all need funds, and actually this should provide the basis of that funding. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Let's have the Honorable Paul Murigi, and then if you want to speak on this.
Yes,
and
Mr.
then
Speaker.
Farah Mohammed follow.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to speak on this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a well thought out bill, Mr. Speaker, to establish a psychosocial support center so that we can maintain the mental wellness of our officers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is trying to curb wastage of resources or wastage of the government resources of recovering or of maybe doing the litigation which are done or the damages which are done by the officers when they are not in good mind, Mr. Speaker. If these centers will be established in every county, our officers, Mr. Speaker, will get a good place where they can go and refresh their minds, Mr. Speaker, and go back to their working station, Mr. Speaker, well fresh, Mr. Speaker. Since when the officers, Mr. Speaker, are not in the right mind, Mr. Speaker, they would do something which may tend to seem as if those officers are not in right mind, Mr. Speaker. And many people start accusing them that, Mr. Speaker, they are using excessive force, Mr. Speaker, whereas they are suffering from stress. So if these centers will be there, Mr. Speaker, will help the officers to reduce those stress, Mr. Speaker, and motivate them to do their work even more better, Mr. Speaker. These centers also, Mr. Speaker, will reduce the cases of suicidal, Mr. Speaker, cases which we have encountered from many police officers, Mr. Speaker, where they take their own lives, Mr. Speaker, where they even massacre the people they are supposed to protect, Mr. Speaker, because of the stress which they normally come across. But through these centers, Mr. Speaker, where the counselors will be provided by the government, Mr. Speaker, our police officers will work without causing unnecessary things, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, through the counseling, it will improve the morale of the police officers to work for this republic, Mr. Speaker. Since if you are demotivated, working would be very difficult for one to do. But if someone is motivated through that counseling, Mr. Speaker, the officers will be even more productive in their work, Mr. Speaker. So this is one of the best bills, Mr. Speaker, which will help this country to save on most resources, Mr. Speaker. Because the proposed amount to build these centers, Mr. Speaker, is only 950 million, Mr. Speaker. This 950 million, Mr. Speaker, is just a drop in our ocean, Mr. Speaker. Since the government is spending a lot of money in defending those cases or the cases which have been done by the officers or the stressed officers to defend them in the court, Mr. Speaker. But if we have these centers, they will help us, Mr. Speaker, to save some resources. Mr. Speaker, also, this will put Kenya in the realm of Africa, Mr. Speaker, whereby we will be having the best practice within Africa, Mr. Speaker. Because internationally, Mr. Speaker, we have seen in Canada, in the United States, and even United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, they have these centers, Mr. Speaker, where their officers, Mr. Speaker, are counseled. They are oriented with what is happening, Mr. Speaker. They are refreshed even after encountering those crimes, Mr. Speaker, or the terrorists, Mr. Speaker, or even the family matters, Mr. Speaker, whereby they are counseled and then they go back to their normal stations, Mr. Speaker, of working. So Kenya will be one of the best countries within this African region, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support this bill. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Farah Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I weigh on this I weigh in on this issue as a son of a policeman. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in police lines. My father was recruited into the colonial police force in 1956, and I grew up in police lines. Mr. Speaker, I visit very often the house where we grew up. My father, my late sister, and my other two brothers. And it's the same room in Garissa administration police lines, which was occupied by one family. We were living in one room. The room was both a kitchen, a bedroom, and our sitting room, my study room, everything. And my dad used to spend most of the nights outside there, where a mat would be there. Mr. Speaker, this time, when I went to visit the same place, it is two officers who are living in the same room. It hasn't changed. 63 years after independence, or 64 years.
Order, honorable member for, honorable member for Kericho. Please, is that Kericho? Narok, please. We have to just respect the House. Come back and do the correct thing. You cannot afford to prejudice the House that much. Go back and then just do the correct thing. Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable Farah.
Mr. Speaker, during those days, I remember police officers used to be given ration by the government. And this is a rollover from the colonial practice. They used to be given corned beef. They used to be given fish, sardines, I remember very well, in tin fish. And they used to go and collect the ration for every family from a government distributor. And for the officers who come from those pastoral areas, they used to be given dates. And ghee, literally ghee. Oil, for that matter. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this with a very heavy heart, that our policemen were better off under the colonial administration than they are now under independent Kenya. The salaries, the remunerations, the living conditions, the risks they're supposed to undertake, the lack of insurance on their deaths when they die in the line of action, and the horrible state in which they live, particularly when it comes to housing, Mr. Speaker, are bad. It pricks the conscience of everybody, including myself, when I see the kind of conditions the men and women who are supposed to be awake the whole night to protect us, to make sure that we're safe, are living themselves in the most unsafe conditions. Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder that now we are asking for psychosocial intervention, because, Mr. Speaker, protect me from the ladies who are here making a lot of, starting with the Honorable
Elachi. Honorable Elachi,
you are very loud with your group, Elachi.
You may proceed, Honorable Farah.
And Fatuma. Anyway,
Honorable Farah,
I'm not on the chair, thank you.
Allow me to run the House. You are not on the seat. Okay. You may proceed.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I remember those days, and I want this for the benefit of the young people who never witnessed that. Not only did my mother used to go into a government distributor and pick the ration from there, which was given to every police officer. At that time, which is basically a rollover from how the colonialists treated our policemen. My mother used to go to a butchery every day and pick a pound of meat so that we have a balanced diet. We used to be given corned beef from the Kenya Meat Commission those days. We had dates. The children of police officers and the police officers themselves used to have balanced diets. Today, we see a police officer on the beat from morning until evening. Nobody cares whether he has had a cup of tea. Nobody cares whether he has had lunch. The presumption is that his lunch or his dinner, he will have it at home. To bash police officers. We bash, I still have a problem with Beatrice Elachi because she's very loud. Anyway.
Honorable Farah, proceed. That's a moderated consultation.
This is interesting. I expect utmost silence, yes. And that's why I don't think Beatrice Elachi is soft. She's still loud.
Order.
I'm not addressing her. I'm saying she's loud.
Order, Honorable Farah. Order, Honorable Farah. You are a ranking member.
Okay,
and I expect
Honorable
better.
Speaker, I will proceed with the contributions.
I expect better way of handling this matter. Proceed.
Proceed. I will proceed, yes, indeed. Honorable Speaker, there are 3 professions in this country where the absolute sacrifice is done by the people who man those professions. You see, Kenyans, including Parliament here, always castigating our teachers. And we know what teachers go through to get us to be what we are. You see them always complaining about our doctors and our nurses. And you have to understand, I come from a medical family myself, for you to understand, when somebody is called on a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, a lady with a breastfeeding child, and she has to go to hospital and can stay in hospital until the following day at around midday or after, even in the afternoon. Those professions, our doctors, our policemen, our nurses, our teachers, they deserve better than we give them right now as a country. So we will try and deal with the social, and I support this bill right now here to make that amendment itself to the act, to the parent act, to offer that. But what psychosocial intervention will help you against hunger, the banks of hunger? An officer who has been in the beat from the whole night and has not had dinner and cannot take out money out of his pocket and eat in a restaurant because it's not good enough. He needs to feed his family in the house. They earn so little, so paltry. So it's my humble plea to this House and to this country. Let's take good care of our officers, police officers. They work in such areas like Northeastern Province where there are IEDs planted by terrorists and lose their lives in an environment some of them have never seen before. We don't compensate them that well. When they die, their children suffer because there is no provision, there's no fund to take care of the education of those children or to take care of the welfare of those families. As a parliament, I'm very happy because I've seen many members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, can I beg you to give me an additional 5 minutes if you don't mind? Okay. Now, we are members of parliament.
We are giving you 1 minute.
What will you do with the rest? There's not very few people. Anyway, too few of them are willing to. But anyway, let me say, we as members of parliament are so conscious of what happens to our own colleagues when they come in for one term and they lose out And we see them out in the streets because we are pushing for them to get a certain minimum pension. That's why right now we want to contribute towards an insurance system which is going to give us at least a guarantee for our own health when we are out of parliament. That when you are out of parliament, you can still enjoy the medical cover that we have now. Think of a police officer, a young man, 30 years old, 28 years old, killed in the streets of Nairobi with a young family. His wife is 4 or 5 years younger than him. He's got 2 or 3 children himself. And here they are as orphans. Do we have a system to take care of those children? Do we have that? We don't. We don't. I think it's a pity that this bill at the stage it is and how limited it is in terms of the provision of the psychosocial services to the officers.
Very well. You have had your bite. The Honorable Adan Kenan, another ranking member. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the definition of a police officer is a law enforcement officer. And pursuant to Article 243 of the current Constitution, the functions of the Kenya Police Service, Mr. Speaker, includes the provision of assistance to the public when the public is in need, maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace, protection of life and property, investigation of crimes, collection of criminal intelligence, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension of offenders, and the enforcement of law and order, and performance of any other duty that may be prescribed by the Inspector General of Police. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a timely one, and I want to thank the Honorable Masara for thinking out of the box and coming up with this pivotal legislative proposal aimed at introducing far-reaching reforms to the Police Service Commission in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to enhance the welfare, the professionalism, and accountability of the police force while fostering community relations. Mr. Speaker, one of the key provisions in the bill is the issue of mental health and welfare and the well-being of the member of our police officer, Mr. Speaker. Recognizing the psychological toll of a police work, of a police officer, Mr. Speaker, this bill mandates the National Police Service to prioritize the mental health and well-being of police officers by implementing structured counseling, psychological support, and wellness programs. Mr. Speaker, it is true that our police officers have been neglected over the years. They provide a pivotal service, Mr. Speaker, to the public. And Mr. Speaker, generally it said, a country without a professionally trained, adequately funded police is a country that does not have peace and tranquility. Mr. Speaker, this critical profession, Mr. Speaker, there are countries that over the years have even survived without a military force. But no country in the world has survived without police force. This being the case, Mr. Speaker, their work involves a very difficult job, Mr. Speaker, because they deal with the public. They deal with criminal element. And therefore, part of their job is to manage criminal activities, collect, synthesize criminal intelligence, Mr. Speaker, and protect the public. So this, Mr. Speaker, requires a lot of psychological support and wellness program in order to reduce stress-related incidents and enhance the officer's morale and performance. So, Mr. Speaker, without the officers' morale and performance, it's difficult for them to execute their day-to-day job, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other aspect of this bill is to enhance oversight and accountability. And this is one of the things that over the years we have struggled to have an accountable, professionally trained, well-remunerated police force, Mr. Speaker, that meets the test of time because Kenya is a premier republic that prides in the enforcement of law and order within the meaning of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because unless you adequately train, you will not have a proper understanding of the Constitution. This is why these two come hand in hand. Mr. Speaker, this oversight role, the bill as it seeks to fortify oversight and accountability mechanisms within the National Police Service by ensuring a fair, impartial, and transparent handling of complaints. Because it's two-way. They handle the public, there are complaints against the public, at times there are also complaints against the police officers. This must be put on a scale that will be fair to the police officers and to the public, Mr. Speaker. That is why sometimes when I see individuals outrightly condemning our police officers, Mr. Speaker, I empathize and sympathize with the police officers because their work is difficult. We as legislators, Mr. Speaker, we must come out and support the good police officers. It's not all the police officers are bad. We have some of the best brains in the midst among the police officers. And therefore, I want to urge the Kenyan public to desist in collectively condemning our police force because they are human beings. They are there for us. They do our work. They protect us. They support us. We empathize under very difficult circumstances, Mr. Speaker. It's a high time that we as a parliament, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Article 243, Mr. Speaker, go out of our way and adequately fund our police officers. That is the only way we can have an accountable, resilient, ever-ready police force. And that is the only option, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we'll have a police force there, and that's why we remove them out of the ambit of that big giant called OP, so that they have their own accountable system within the police force that will take care of their day-to-day activities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other activities, the other issue that the bill expected, once this bill is passed, Mr. Speaker, and I hope it will go through, it is expected to cap incidents of misconduct, promote ethical policing, and rebuild also public trust among the law enforcement agents. Because this is the critical component, Mr. Speaker. The public must have faith in our police force. The public must appreciate the work of our police officers. That can only come if there is an understanding. The public must have information, adequate information on what it entails to be a police officer. The police officer must also appreciate what they are expected to do. This is what it means to have an accountable, professionally run, well-funded, and well-grounded police force that meets the test of our constitutional requirement, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other one is they must have a professional. The bill also expects, once it's passed, provides for professional development and capacity building. Because this is a continuous education is what is required. Mr. Speaker, to enhance competency and effectiveness of the police officer, the bill emphasizes a continuous professional development through regular training, skill enhancement programs, and leadership development initiatives. And this is one of the benchmarks of even individual promotions, individual capacity building. And this is what their profession, not only actually their profession, every profession requires, Mr. Speaker. Continuous training. The other bit, Mr. Speaker, is strengthening of community policing. In a bid to foster harmonious relation between the law enforcement and the public, the bill advocates for community policing as a proactive strategy, Mr. Speaker. This proactive engagement, Mr. Speaker, between the police officer and the local community, Mr. Speaker, will create a culture of trust, Mr. Speaker, and cooperation in problem solving. This world, Mr. Speaker, that is bedeviled with challenges, with criminal activities, with cybercrime, and many other challenges. We need that cooperation between the public and the police. And there must be an avenue. The avenue is this bill. The avenue is an acceptable, law-centered, law-driven, law-placed mechanism that this bill attempts to provide that will enable the police officer to function as expected. Mr. Speaker, this bill also represents a significant step forward in reforming the Kenya policing framework by enhancing the police officer welfare, the police officer welfare, professionalizing law enforcement, and strengthening community partnership. This is what is called Yumbakumi Initiative. The Yumbakumi Initiative, Mr. Speaker, was an administrative mechanism. But once this bill is passed, it will be anchored in the law. And this is critical, and therefore what we expect. Mr. Speaker, luckily in our constitution, there's something called public participation. And the framers of the current constitution, Mr. Speaker, were not naive, were not feeble. They thought out of the box that there's need to engage the public, and it's two-way. The police officer is expected as part of the Kenyan society, as part of the law enforcement community, Mr. Speaker, to understand and appreciate the ecosystem in which they operate. That ecosystem is unique. It's filled with criminals. We have law-abiding citizens, Mr. Speaker, and there's also public expectation on what the police officer is supposed to do. Mr. Speaker, that notwithstanding, there are a number of things that the bill we must also take into account, because it's one thing to legislate. The issue of funding and resource allocation, Mr. Speaker, as I've alluded to, must be addressed comprehensively, because we can legislate, Mr. Speaker, and we have legislated in the past. But this must come with a proactive, practical funding program for this bill to have a meaning. Mr. Speaker, the other bit is, once we talk about the stakeholders involvement, Mr. Speaker, this bit must also be collectively approached through public education. The other one is conflict resolution between the public and the police. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to say this. Our police officers, as part of our police diplomacy, are right now in Haiti. This country has prided itself by being providing some of the best police officers. I want to urge my colleagues, even as we approach the budget of 2025-2026, I want to beseech you, let us reallocate funding from other sectors.
Very well, very well. You have done well. You have done well, ranking member. Let's allow other members also to contribute. Great speak. The Honorable Catherine Wambilianga and then the Honorable Nyamai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to weigh in on this matter this bill that seeks to improve the wellness and the welfare of the police officers. It is common sense, and we see it, that our police officers actually are not living a good life. And as much as they're not living a good life, it's something that has been not corrected by us, especially us, the key leaders in this country. These are people who have taken good care of us. They help us whenever we have issues. We call them to order when we have matters in our villages, in our homes, and all that. But when you come to the welfare, and even whoever takes care of the wellness, it has not been taken care of. I wish to support the Honorable Masara who brought this bill, because looking at what the policemen go through, especially in terms of matters, mental illness, most of them actually find themselves in a corner, especially when faced with situations. They have nobody to go to, and it is us, the public, who should help them, and us, the legislators, who should help them. Our police officers have gone through very difficult situations. When, for example, there's an accident on the road, they're faced with a very difficult situation. They're the ones we call to remove the bodies. When there's drowning, we call them on to order to remove the bodies for us. But at the end of the day, nobody seeks to sit down and counsel them. They get back to their homes with their normal problems, which even emanate from the poor salaries that they get. So you find with such situations, a police officer goes home, is very stressed, goes to meet a family, and whenever there's anything in that family, they always result into causes of suicide. This is really something that us legislators should look at. So I want to support the fact that they establish for them a wellness center that will care for them. I remember when I was young, I had a brother who was a police officer. We could visit him, but the conditions under which they lived was terrible. The government has tried to improve on that, but not good enough. They still share beds, they still share houses, and so much has happened. But these are our own sons and children whom we have educated. We expect them also to have good life, and when they get home, they also need to have that peace that everybody else gets. But in our own opinion, when we look at officers, they are only verified. Nobody respects them because we imagine these are just officers who should take care of us. But us, the legislators, we should also look at their welfare and know how to, what we can put in place that can make them, cushion them from a number of issues. And the fact that we are also seeking to establish wellness centers in counties, I feel the government should also allocate a few resources. And to support the previous speaker who has just spoken, Honorable Kenyan, we should even relegate some of the funds from other ministries and put to these police officers' welfare so that they have centers where they can go and have reprieve in such centers. I support this bill, and I hope at the end of this, the implementation will take place. You know, here in Parliament, we pass bills, but the implementation becomes a problem. So once we do this, we believe the government will take this in place and the bill will be implemented. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kitui South, Rachel Nyamai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this very important bill by the Honorable Masara. Honorable Speaker, this is a very important bill, and it is trying to enhance the work that is done by the National Police Service and also the work that is done by the Inspector General in order to provide better working conditions for our police officers. Honorable Speaker, I would like to start by appreciating the contribution by the Honorable Kenyan and the Honorable Farah Maalim in the way they have clarified the importance of this bill. Honorable Speaker, these police officers who are taking care of everyone, from the president to our own villages, are not just officers. These are our children, these are our grandchildren, these are our nieces and nephews, these are our husbands. These police officers, Honorable Speaker, are our boyfriends. Honorable Speaker, these police officers are girlfriends of people of this country. They have offered themselves to go to the most dangerous places, to be working at night when people are asleep, to be going to the dangerous places. For example, in my own constituency, police officers working in Ekoda, working in Mutomo, are the ones that are going to Moda, and they are the ones that are going all the way to the border, to places called Konekaliti, where they go to places where there is no chief, where there is no assistant chief, and places where people have occupied, and we expect them to give us the best. So, Honorable Speaker, with that background, I would like to say that we need to ensure that their mental health is taken care. Honorable Speaker, these police officers are the ones who collect bodies of people who have disagreed within their homesteads and fought and killed each other. The police officer will be the first to come and collect those bodies. When there is a road accident on our roads, our own police officers are the ones who will go to collect those bodies, Honorable Speaker. They may not even be getting the after-service counseling to get those bad images off their minds. And they are doing it every other day. Honorable Speaker, when these police officers are exposed to all this collection of bodies all over the country, picking bodies that have decomposed, delivering them to city mortuary, I think that we need to make sure that we pass this Honorable Masara's bill to ensure that we provide the funding that is needed. We have a very good public service, police service commission, Honorable Speaker. We have very good officers, like the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kanja, people like Masengeli, wonderful people, but what can they do without proper funding? So, Honorable Speaker, I would like to say that I support this bill that is going to ensure that our police... Give me a minute.
Please, the Honorable, 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. So, Honorable Speaker, I would like just to say that in the interest of time, that we need to provide money for them. We need to ensure that these camps are properly equipped, not only with the equipment that is required for relaxation, but also the human resource that is needed to give them the training that they need. Honorable Speaker, also ensuring there is a proper link between the police officers and the community. And I hope that beyond this bill, we can even have an open day for our police officers within our sub-counties and within our counties, where they make use of this money that I hope that will be not only provided for by our budget committee, we would like actually to see that budget line provided for so that we can support that budget line and ensure that money is provided for them. So, Honorable Speaker, I would also like to see a situation where their retirement is properly planned, such that they are not so worried that they are working in far-flung places, and when they come home, they are not even sure of their benefits. So, Mr. Speaker, when we take care of these police officers, we will ensure that their families are taken care, their children are taken care, and the community's well-being is good. Honorable Speaker, I would like to give an example of a young man from my constituency who has lost his job already. I have done a lot, Honorable Speaker, writing back and forth letters to the Inspector General. He was serving as a police officer. He went back home to find that his own wife is not at home, that his family has disintegrated, and because of that, he got into drinking. And I believe that what happened to him was not fair, because this is a sick man who is drinking alcohol out of frustration. So we need also to be careful with the disciplining of police officers, and I can see it's part of this bill, such that they are not just punished so harshly without establishing the reason as to why they have become indisciplined. So we need also to look at the issue of police who are drinking alcohol. Some may be drinking alcohol because of a situation that they find themselves in. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill fully, and I hope that it will be passed by this House so that we can provide the camps that are needed and have a situation where the mental health of our police officers is taken care. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Very well. The Vice Chair of the Committee on Security, Dido Razo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to add my voice to this very important bill by Honorable Masara. Honorable Speaker, a police officer is a first responder who is responsible for law enforcement and public safety. A police officer provides emergency services by responding to call and investigating crimes. They patrol areas to detect and prevent crime, and are expected to write an incident report at the end of the day. Honorable Speaker, as members of this House and as legislators and leaders in this country, I think if there is a profession that we have given a raw deal in this land, is for our men and women in blue. These are police officers. This amendment is progressive. It is also forward-looking. More importantly, it addresses three cardinal areas. First is about accountability across the police force. Secondly, it addresses the role of leadership, both about those who command police officers and men, and also about we as leaders in this country. What is our responsibility to have a good police service? Honorable Speaker, the second aspect of this bill, it addresses the welfare and well-being of our men and women in police uniform. In odd hours, in rain in dusty areas, and in dangerous locations, these are men and women we call upon to provide public safety and security. Sometimes they are poorly armed, they are ill-equipped, and the terrain does not favor them. But because it is their duty Many people think that police service is about employment. It is actually a calling. In many developed countries across the world, the police are the most well-remunerated civil servants. Because when you try to describe the task or the work of a police officer, then you begin to feel that actually this man or woman does more than what the Salaries and Remuneration Commission thinks about. Honorable Speaker, recently, during demonstrations, riots, protests, attacks, and even incidences of rustling, this particular force was the most blamed, blatantly. But little did we experience people coming out to say, yeah, okay, we know what happened to demonstrators, but what about the police officers and men who are keeping peace in a particular area on that day? There are those who lost their lives. There are those who lost arms and legs. And there are those who have lost loved ones. Honorable Speaker, as a former military officer, and a distinguished one for that matter, in a day, those men and women of the police force, when they are on a beat, in whatever part of the country, they go through so much. They recover dead bodies, bodies that have been thrown into pit latrines, bodies that have been thrown into sewages. They are the ones who will go to the morgue to identify bodies. And in the end, as a result of that, these men and women go through serious post-traumatic stress disorder. We appreciate it with minimalism because we think it is normal and it is their job. But these are fathers, husbands, brothers, sisters. So they are human beings at the end of the day who will appreciate soothing words for somebody to say, thank you, well done, it is okay. So when this bill came up before our committee, we really thought through it. We called the stakeholders, and we were also amazed at the input in terms of appreciation, because we did not just look at only the men and women in blue, but also on the other side, from the civilian side, who gave us very serious input in terms of going forward, how do we professionalize our police force? In terms of training, of commanders, of constables, so that they are able to do their job, but at the same time, they remain accountable to those people they are supposed to protect and defend and look after them. When you look at the job of a police officer, they give the ultimate sacrifice by putting their lives on the line. Today, when you look at social media, there is an incident in Northeastern where a police vehicle has been hit by an IED, and some of them were injured. But for people who are just looking at that on the social media, They'll think that they were careless or they didn't have the right vehicles and all that. But on the other side, a family has lost a loved one, and soldiers and commanders have lost their colleagues, comrade in arms. So that is why the issue of psychosocial support that has been overlooked for too long must begin to be addressed, starting from a police station all the way to the highest command level. Because if we don't do that, then we are going to lose very good men and women who will have substantial contribution to the life and well-being of our country. Honorable Speaker, during our interaction, one of the things we found that must be done is the issue of uniform, medical support, insurance, pension, housing, ration, protective equipment. Among those things that must make our police effective, professional, and efficient in them carrying out their duties. Finally, Honorable Speaker, there are words that have been used to describe the men and women in blue: determined, strong, ambitious, brave, hero, selfless, courageous, friend, daring, responsive. These are verbs that have been used how a policeman or woman carry out their duties by putting their lives on the line.
The Honorable Karoli Omondi. Okay. The Honorable Peter Kihungi. And then down here, the Honorable Fatma Masito. She's in the house.
I'm here.
Proceed. Speak. Yes.
Basi niseme asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kuweza kunipatia fursa hii nami niweze kuchangia katika sheria hii ambayo imeletwa mbele ya bunge hili na Mheshimiwa Masara. Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria hii inalenga kuboresha ustawi na hadhi ya askari wetu polisi. Mheshimiwa Spika, polisi wetu wa taifa hili la Kenya wanaishi maisha utadhani wao si binadamu wala si watu ambao wanatangamana na binadamu. Mheshimiwa Spika, askari polisi wetu wa Kenya wana dhiki. Hiyo lugha ndio naweza kutumia ndio iweze kueleweka vizuri. Wana dhiki, wana shida, wana maisha magumu wakati wanatuhudumia na wakati pia baada ya kustaafu. Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria hii ambayo inataka kudumisha ustawi wao na hadhi yao, Mheshimiwa Spika, na kuweza pia kuwatengea kitengo maalum cha kuweza kuwashughulikia askari hawa ambao mara nyingi wanapatikana na ile shida ya msongamano wa mawazo na pia wanapata madhara ya akili. Mheshimiwa Spika, askari wetu wanafanya kazi ngumu sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, unaweza kumpata askari amefanya kazi hata masaa 24 akikimbia juu na chini. Mara nyingine unampata ameitiwa mahali tu accident imetokea, hata wewe binadamu wa kawaida huwezi hata kuangalia yale mazingira ambayo ajali ile imetokea, kwa sababu pengine mtu ameumia vibaya sana au pengine amekufa kifo kibaya sana, lakini sijaona askari akiogopa kusongelea hali kama ile. Wengine unawapata wameenda hata kuokoa mahali moto unatokea, amekwenda kuokoa na anapambana na mambo mengi. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, mazingira yao ambayo wanaishi askari wetu wa Kenya ni aibu. Ni aibu hata ukiyasema kwa mataifa mengine, na ni aibu pia kwa sisi wenyewe wa Kenya. Wanaishi maisha ya kinyama kabisa. Mheshimiwa Spika, unampata askari amepatwa na msonga mawazo kwa sababu hata familia yake mwenyewe inamshinda kuihimili, kwa sababu kwanza mshahara ni duni, pili hawezi kupata matibabu mazuri, tatu hawezi kupatia watoto wake elimu nzuri. Basi Mheshimiwa Spika, maisha yakiwa kama hivi, askari utapata wanajihusisha na mambo mengi. Wengine unawapata wameingilia ulevi mpaka amekuwa mlevi mbwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu anafikiria leo hii mimi nimeshinda kazi tangu asubuhi mpaka jioni, lakini mshahara mwisho wa mwezi hata uwezi kusema utamtosha, hata wiki moja hauwezi kumtosha. Wanaishi maisha, anakopa, mwisho wa mwezi akipata mshahara, Mheshimiwa Spika, analipa tu madeni na anaanza tena alifu kwa kijiti kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. Yaani anaanza moja tena. Anaanza moja kukopa mpaka ikifika tarehe 30 akipata mshahara analipa madeni yale na anaendelea kuishi. Haya ni maisha aina gani, Mheshimiwa Spika? Ukilinganisha na ile kazi ambayo askari polisi wetu wanaifanya ndani ya taifa hili, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi naunga mkono sheria hii iweze kudhibiti, kwa sababu askari ni ndugu zetu, ni baba zetu, ni kina dada zetu, ni marafiki zetu, tunaishi nao vizuri na wanatufanyia pia kazi nzuri zaidi. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, niunge mkono sheria hii ikipitishwa, na ninatumaini itapitishwa na bunge hili, iweze kusaidia hawa ndugu zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, asante sana kwa kunipa fursa hii.
The Honorable Edith Nyenze.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to air my views on this bill on Police Service Commission. And let me take this opportunity to also congratulate our colleague, Honorable Masara, for this good bill. I note that this bill is a bill that aims at strengthening what you already have, especially on the mandate of the National Police Service Commission in addressing the mental health and well-being of the police officers. And this bill establishes psychosocial units and also programs whose aim is to promote the mental health and well-being of police officers. The bill is actually trying to insert a clause into 12A, which requires a police commission to provide police officers with some mental health services. And this bill requires the commission to establish well-equipped centers in offices, in camps, in their training colleges, and communities for police officers to receive psychosocial services. Madam Speaker, I note that apart from this, our police officers do a lot of work. They are actually exposed to harsh environments, to environments where they actually not even been trained in, to environments which are harsh. And especially this day in age, with our current social media, the police officers are actually badly exposed. So apart from creating these centers, it's also good to note that we need to also improve their personal emoluments. Their salaries are sometimes very low. They stay in very bad houses. Even though this one has been talked about for a long time, nothing much has been done as concerning their housing and also their salaries as needs to be improved. So this psychosocial support is very important because being exposed to such environments, they are meant to have some mental torture. Some of them go to some harsh areas and they stay in such areas for months without even taking leave. And when they take leave, they are actually not given enough money to take to their family. So you are overworking yourself, You are not being appreciated by the people you serve because you are correcting them. They don't appreciate you. The environment is harsh. And then at the same time, you are not taking, there is nothing to show for it, especially taking to your family and your children. And you also find that some, after being posted in harsh areas, some police officers have stayed in very harsh areas for a very long time, and they are not given transfers. Even when they keep on applying for transfers to other areas, they are not considered. And this is, with the time, this one exposes them to a lot of torture, leading to some ill mental health. Therefore, these centers are very important so that they can actually share with their supervisors. They can also discuss with their colleagues. They can also hear their views so that they are helped in these areas where they feel they are badly exposed. I also, Madam Speaker, also feel that the training which they get does not expose them enough to such issues. So I think it's also, as they get trained, it's also good for them to get exposed to the kind of life which they will be exposed to when they go to the real work. Like now we have some people in Haiti. Maybe some of these police officers are people who have been trained in Nairobi, in urban areas, and then they are taken to very harsh areas. One has not been exposed to such. Yet you are supposed to keep your job because the job opportunities are very rare. So you are actually put in a very harsh and very hard environment such that you need some help. And this bill is very important because this bill is expected to try to address such issues and improve the welfare of the police officers, especially their mental health. With that, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Nyense. The Honorable Mary Wamaua, member for Maragua.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this amendment bill of the National Police Service. Madam Speaker, as I support and congratulate Peter Masala, I also want to say that I support all my colleagues in whatever they are saying, because it is true, we need the establishment of the psychosocial support centers, especially starting with the county, so that at least we can be able to address mental health challenges within the force by promoting professionalism, stability of the mind, and also accountability. Madam Speaker, it is not only in the police force that we need these psychosocial support centers. If it were possible to the government, we would start them in all the sectors that we have our people working. Madam Speaker, you bear me witness that as we study today, there are so many issues that people are coming across, starting with the economic hardships, the social media and online pressures. Madam Speaker, the relationship and family struggles that we have. Also the workplace stresses that we usually encounter as we try to work, substance abuse and unhealthy coping mechanism, Madam Speaker, and also the health issues and lack of access to mental health care. Madam Speaker, all these are issues that are making our people who are working, not only the police officers, really to need the psychosocial support centers. Because it is from these that we shall be able to speak to the mind, to guide and counsel, and even to get closer to many of our people who are getting affected out of all what surround some of the areas that I've talked about. Madam Speaker, you'll find that depression is not only in the police officers and the other people who are working for this government, but you're also getting it in our children. Those in secondary schools, in universities, and also in the primary schools. Because when it touches on the economic hardship, and the parents have been hit by this, and their children are in the universities and they require the basic needs and they cannot be able to be provided by the parents, then you get these children undergoing such problems, equally to those who are in secondary school. Madam Speaker, long time, when we were in primary school, we did not have this, like the way it has described, out of the issues that there are today as compared with that time. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I can say without any fear or contradiction that this bill is very crucial to be amended so that our Kenyan police officer who are witnessing troubling increase in suicide cases amongst their ranks due to the factors that I've said can really be addressed. The proposed amendment, Madam Speaker, provides structured mental health support, potentially reducing incident of erratic behavior linked to the mental distress. Madam Speaker, this is very crucial to the people whose work is to protect us. And thus, we should start by, first of all, looking at their mental well-being first so that we can enable them to serve the country better. Madam Speaker, you can imagine a police officer who is already mentally depressed and he's being waited to deliver work during the day, maybe less a bit, and at times, because we still have shortages of staffing, to wake up at night and still go on patrols to protect our people. Madam Speaker, this is not an area that we can forget, bearing in mind their work is to make sure that there is security while we are asleep in our businesses and in our working places. And therefore, since this is a constitutional right to each and every Kenyan, then you know we really need, as we go to other sectors, we really need to start with our Kenyan police officers. Therefore, that is why I want to congratulate Honorable Peter Masara for having thought about this, so that the moment we start with this, because I know it's going to yield good fruits, then as a government, we should think of how it can trickle to other sectors so that at least we can be able to fight the depressions and the stresses in our working areas. Madam Speaker, I know we have such places in our hospitals, but purely on the level 4, 5, and 6, which are not everywhere. Therefore, if we can say in each and every county we start, then we shall be assisting some of the areas, the little that there is, to address the psychosocial in our hospitals. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say I support this and request when this motion goes through, let it be fast-tracked so that it can be implemented to make sure that whatever we are bringing out as areas that are affecting our police officers and others in different working places can be addressed. So, Madam Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Andrew Okwome, member for Karachonyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Now, let me first say that the work of police is extremely essential, important, and very, very necessary. And I say so believing that we are not treating our police force or policemen in a manner commensurate with what they do for us. These are people who face danger every moment they are on duty. Sometimes they work at night, and at times during the daytime. And in each occasion, there are, in some cases, people behind them looking for how they can disable them from doing their work in order that they can stop whatever illegal action these people wanted to take. Some lose their jobs during that kind of process. When it comes to the conditions of their living, Madam Speaker, some live in what it is shameful to think of as residential houses. The structure they live in is made of mabati. The floor is sometimes cemented, and at times it is bare soil that is just made at least to enable them put their beds or mats on. All these are very frustrating conditions. The people's attitude on police needs some corrective action. Some people think of police as enemies, not realizing that they are not really enemies. Those who think of them as enemies are criminals. Those who think as their enemies are maybe drivers, because they want the drivers to move their vehicles systematically and legally. Although they have something to say which is corrective on the policemen themselves, and that is the bribes that occurs occasionally with some of the policemen. Madam Speaker, I cannot emphasize much more on the problems the police face. But one thing I must say is on the positivity. The policemen are providing security for us. People just realize their importance when a problem occurs. Under such cases, everybody's looking for a policeman to come and bail him out. That's when people know the importance of policemen. I think our population also need to be educated so that they can realize the importance of the police service, because we need them. And because of the necessity of what they are doing for us, I think they need to be paid well. I know one of my colleagues said they are well paid. I very much doubt this. These people are not paid well. And that's why you see them looking for almost no mistakes by drivers and ask them for some coins in their pockets. We don't need to subject such people providing excellent service to us to a condition when they need additional money in the form of bribe. I think something needs to be done on that. I support the idea of psychosocial support centers. But then these centers should not just be for reaction. They should be also preventive, so that policemen are checked often on their mental conditions as well as physical condition, to ensure that they are fit for the work and they can do the work when they are having fully mental composure that can make them do their work well and properly. So these centers need to be existing all the time for the police to visit. But then in addition to that, they should have a general medical checkup, which should include all requirements of wellness of the body, including mental capability. Madam Speaker, I feel I have said the importance of their work. I've said what action we need to take, and let me emphasize that something should be done on their accommodation. I can remind my colleagues plus the Speaker that if you go to hot areas like Moyale, Mogadishu, and all those, the houses in which they live, the Mabati type, is almost impossible for life when it is daytime. And at night, it is also worse because it gets too cold. So where would these people be? There can only be night, there can only be day, and each of these offer intolerable conditions for them. That's why you find they get sometimes a little set up and we begin to do what is sometimes dangerous, like killing even their spouses. We need to protect ourselves against such kind of situations by treating our police as human beings doing essential work for us. Madam, with this, I wish to say that I congratulate my colleague, Madam Mr. Masara, who brought up this bill, and I support it. Thanks, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you, Member for Karachi. Thank you. The Honorable Zainab Mohammed, Member for Migori County.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me. I would like also to give my voice on the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill 2024. I do support it in totality, and I would like to say that it is a bill that every Kenyan, I am very sure, would be positive about. Madam Speaker, the police service sector has suffered a lot, and to give them this kind of treatment, I think would be so good for them, considering that our police do go through a lot. For example, there is no family connection in our police unit. You find the police is transferred every single day, and in the process, they lose connection with their family, the parental family, and even family by marriage. And so it's very important that we do take care of their well-being so that they would know how to cope with this situation. Madam Speaker, the police service do need some assistance in financial budget and management. Their salary, we agree, is not adequate enough. But again, some join the forces when they're very young, and they're not able to take care of their financial needs, and they end up in loss that they're not able to service. And so this social well-being would be important for them, because in this unit, a lot of challenges will be taken care of. Madam Speaker, we do agree, all of us, that whenever our service go to give service to this country, our police, they do go through trauma, either directly or indirectly. In a situation where you lose a colleague is shot next to you, you have to carry that colleague, and by the end of the day, they have a hard heart, but by the end of the day, their heart is also soft. And so they go through stress, considering that he has lost a friend or she has lost a friend, and she thinks of the next day, maybe it will be her going. And she looks at the family of this person who has left them, and this again do torture them directly or indirectly. I believe that if this center is established, such problems will be taken care of, but not solved completely. Our police, because of the Kenyan people, some of us also do bring their self-esteem down. There are situations where, unfortunately, you have used substances that change the mindset. Example is alcohol or drugs. And so when the police has come to arrest you, we throw words that bring their self-esteem down. In such a scenario, a police officer might end up using a gun to finish you for bringing himself self-esteem down. It is very important that when such challenges appear to them, they can turn to the centers that would be able to take care of them by talking to them and understanding the situation they are in. Madam Speaker, a living example is what happened in Westgate, Dusit, and Capedro. If we would consider the policemen and women who were at these areas during these accidents or incidents, these people were never taken care of. And you find in a scenario where you find a police did shoot a colleague in circumstances that cannot be explained. In most cases, it is this trauma that they go through, this stress and the depression that they go through, and nobody understands them. And so a small argument, a policeman ends up using the nearest weapon to him, which is a gun. Madam Speaker, our police officers do get injury during their service, and they don't have a way of managing and recovering and returning to work. They just go to the doctor, the injury is treated, maybe has lost a leg, an eye, or whichever part of his or her body. But then there's no other extra service given to this officer. And so he or she goes back and realizes that now she has one hand or has one hand, she cannot or he cannot hold his gun anymore. And this sends him into depression because he knew when he joined the forces that this is a job he has chosen, and he has chosen to defend his people and his country, but unfortunately now is not able to service us. These do send them into serious depression, which ends up piling and sending it down to the family, directly to the children, wife or mother, or brother or sister. So I believe if these centers would be available in each and every polling station, instead of putting it at the county level only, but I know finances also are very constrained, but if we could at least try and put it up to the level of a constituency and then later move it downward, even to a sub-county level, so that these services are available. Sometimes it might be difficult for a police officer who works in Nyatike, where I come from, to go to Migori if such services are provided, to go and get that service. That alone can be stress for him or her because she's leaving her family again to go over 60 kilometers to get to such a center. So this is a very good bill. I congratulate the member who brought it up, and I believe that all members of this House will support it in totality. And if there is any amendment that would make it better, we would request that anybody who has such ideas would bring it forward, but let us support it in totality. It is a good one, and God willing, it will help our police women and men of this country. Lastly, I want to congratulate the policemen and women of this country, telling them that they're our sisters, they're our brothers, we love them. There are sometimes that we do rub our shoulders, especially during maandamano, but by the end of the day, we are still brothers and sisters, and the country belongs to all of us, and we congratulate them, we love them, and we wish them well in their duty. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Geshimo Geveji, member for Geshogo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for also getting this opportunity to contribute to this bill by Honorable Masala. Let me say that the police perform a very important constitutional duty to protect lives and property in this country. And therefore, a stable country is also dependent on a very strong and healthy police force. And that is why I'm in support of this bill. And having seen that this bill has gone the entire process, both through the budget committee, being a money bill, and also through the relevant committee, it shows that this bill has really gotten even support before even it came to this House. And because it is very, very important for the our brothers and sisters who are serving in the police force for purposes of managing the issues that affect them so that they can be able to withstand sometimes the hand working conditions that they normally go or work under. And of course, it goes without saying that sometimes police go through traumatizing incidents, and especially when they are in their line of duty, and especially in volatile areas or where we have conflicts. We've seen quite a number of them lose their lives. Let me not mention the places, there have been many, and especially where we have got tribal conflicts or even external aggressions from, and the recent one, which is also just about to be debated upon from Turkana. And these incidences would also call that these centers are established so that the issues that are affecting them can be managed. And some of the other areas that would require that these police be taken through psychosocial support is also sometimes they also carry so much burden of some families. You see that though some also get into these forces very young, sometimes they may be the only breadwinners in those families. They are low income, support the entire family, even to support their siblings. Of course, sometimes also working in very poor working conditions and living conditions, and stress-related matters and depressions may cause them not to perform their work very well. But of course, Honorable Speaker, looking at this bill, it is not seeking to address the root causes of the problems that would require these social support centers to be established. Of course, the Police Service Commission has a duty, and actually they have a big responsibility to come up with the welfare issues that are affecting the policemen, which are causing them all this stress and depressions that will require the kind of support that we are seeking to establish in this bill. So the Police Service Commission ought to be very innovative in the way they deal with the issues of policemen and women, and they should borrow a leaf from this house, whereby through the leadership of the Speaker, we have gone out of our way even to contribute money from our little savings or from our salaries so that we can have a post-service medical scheme. They should also, the Police Service Commission should also be innovative in a way also to have a little contribution from the people who are serving, so that once they leave the service, apart from the pension that they normally enjoy upon retirement, they can also enjoy a good medical scheme. And that will call for a very little contribution every month so that these police officers can live a good life thereafter after retirement. They should also come, the Police Service Commission should also come with a way of how families can be supported after losing their loved ones while serving on the line of duty. Like young policemen, as you also contributed, Honourable Speaker, while you're on this other side, they leave very young families with no support, devastated, and they had looked upon this police officer the entire of their life for their support for education of the children. So there should be innovative ways of making sure that these families get support even after a departure of a police officer, and especially where one lives or loses life, either in the line of duty or while still in employment. Honourable Speaker, the salaries of police officers, that's also another welfare issue. Some of the issues may not be legislated through an amendment of an act of parliament. Some may also come as an innovative way by the Police Service Commission so that the welfare of the men and women in uniform, whom we are calling the police officers, can be achieved. So, Honorable Speaker, I beg to support, and I believe there is a lot more that needs to be done, because this center will only look at the issues, the affected people, or the most likely to be affected. And finally, Honorable Speaker, let me also propose that after establishing the county psychosocial support centers for the police officers, I think we also need to have others established in due course and as resources may allow, even at the sub-county level, to avoid police officers going long distances. We have some sub-counties which are too huge, and the police officer may not even have money, may not have even a vehicle to take them far and wide to seek for these services. So with time, I think this is a good start, but with this time we can be able to escalate or to devolve them further to the sub-county level, or the officers who will be employed at the county level can also be able to be traveling or mobile up to the sub-county levels so that they can be able to give this well-deserved service. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
MP for Cases.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also put in my support to this particular amendment on the National Police Service Amendment Bill, Section 12, that is seeking to address the very needy issues that affects our officers in line of duty. Mr. Speaker, I think all of us, we are not new to uncertain news that have been running on our screens each and every now and then in our social medias, where police officers are taking away their lives, or even going to an extent of taking away innocent lives of people, just as a point of expression of depression, a point of expression of dissatisfaction, a point of expression of frustration. All these issues put together, Mr. Speaker, draws us back to the knowledge that also police officers are human beings, like every other person. We all know that we gave ourselves a new constitution in the year 2010, that even up to now, we are still working on it to ensure we put implementation to the latter. And this particular amendment, Mr. Speaker, exactly is getting us back to Article 43 on the economic and social rights of Kenyans. As I have said, police officers are Kenyans like any other Kenyan. And in that particular article, it enumerates a list of rights every Kenyan is entitled. The first one is the issue of quality health care. And when you talk of health care, it's not only limited to the aspect of illness, medical attention to ailments, it also includes squarely the issue of mental illness or sickness. What we are seeing, or the frustration that are being demonstrated by officers, where a junior officer goes and opens fires to the colleagues, or even to the seniors, those who give instructions. As we all know, the operations of men in uniform is a question of orders, sanctioning of orders, instructions, and directives. It's actually like a top-down kind of operations. But sometimes some of these instructions given to some people who are already sick, and there is no person, there is no quota that is able to evaluate, is able to look at, is able to check the well-being of these particular people. Sometimes they're given a huge assignments that to them it sounds like a punishment. And because they're already lost hope in life, what we are witnessing now, what is happening, we are losing a lot of officers. Somebody goes home and kills the family, including innocent children, just to express their frustration. And even after that, realizing that he has done or she has done the worst, also takes away his life. So we lose. Mr. Speaker, this particular amendment that is seeking to establish a psychosocial support system or centers in every county, and more so like my colleague Kishimu is saying, we also need to look at beyond counties, because some counties are, well, they are vast, like Marsabit is a huge county. You cannot imagine one in Orisiolo, where the fine of sub-county or even a local area where an OCS sits, to connect to the main county level is a big distance. I mean, it's 2 walls apart.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say it is time that we need as a Kenyan to support such amendment so that the people we expect them to secure our lives, let us also secure their lives by ensuring they are okay, they are well, the issues are addressed. And not only addressing the issues of sickness and mental wellness, we also need to understand what are the causes of this. One of the issues is the issue of financial or economic economic challenges they go through. Some of them, they get employed today, they are young. Some of them are taken through some process of getting to this particular job because they are looking for a job. Only for them to realize when they begin to earn and begin to do what you call financial plan. Whatever they expect, their expenditure against their income doesn't match. Why? Because probably during training, they had no enough time for them to be also taken through financial training. This particular center should serve and provide a mechanism of continuous training, ensuring that they are sensitized on how they can manage their finances, how they can integrate their family in financial decisions, so that together they move together. Some of them end up maybe they borrow loans, they misuse the loans, the loanies are there on their necks. Nowadays, we are even aware of what we call shylocking. They shylock everything, to the extent when they wake up tomorrow, they realize they are naked. They have no meaning. The families are here, they want to pay school fees, they want to meet medical needs of their family, and there is no money. What remains? They indulge in alcoholism. In the long run, they lose the meaning of life and they die. Reason why? Because there is no person, there is no expert that can always continuously engaging them and giving them discussion. Some of them who have gone through problems, they get a moment of exchanging experience with those who have come through the same challenges, and they realize this life is as a meaning, and whatever they are going through is not a unique to what happens to the other people. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this particular amendment, and I want to congratulate my colleague, Honorable Peter Masara, for thinking of solving the problems of our police officers. Could be, maybe because most of the time I know my colleague on the other side, Tana River, the other day they were singing Manene ya Mandamano, and they know the problems they are taking through police officers. But I'm happy today, they also know that the police officers are our children, and we need to cater for their interest. That when they come and facilitate their demonstrations, sometimes they go overboard. They're also affected through tear gas, stoning, and in the long run, they get frustrated. You welcome Mr. Speaker today when there's Mandamano, and you find the police officers, the whole night, they are stayed in the field there. They don't get food, they don't get enough sleep. Tell me, and they are human beings. So this particular support, I want to stand to say I support, and not only support, we also now need to look at beyond it and resource it well. This particular house needs to look at that particular department, and we want to cost it well and give sufficient resources, because it will be meaningless to establish a center without resources, without enough money, without enough personnel, without enough experts. It will be meaningless. So let us create it here and ensure, as we are discussing even budget policy statement and future budgets, let's give it the attention it deserves. Thank you so much, and I want to support this particular amendment.
Honorable Kosgei, nominated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Beg your pardon. I wish on the onset to support this amendment bill by my friend Masara, touching on very important members of our society that we cannot overemphasize the importance of the role the police officers play. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about psychosocial support, we are talking about their emotional well-being. We are talking about their social life. We are talking about their mental state and well-being. We are also referring to their spiritual needs because they are human beings. We would have to build a resilience in them and hope and a sense of national pride. Mr. Speaker, it cannot be overemphasized, and I think this House should treat it as one of the very important aspects of our society, because it touches on our security, both personal and as internal security within the country. What these officers faces in the field, managing through their roles. For example, their four basic roles all over the world. It is the same: to enforce the law, to prevent or deter crime, provide emergency response, and provide support system services required by the society. In their line of duty, they face circumstances that affect them as people. So I wish to appeal to us as a society, because my colleagues have contributed and prosecuted in details some of the areas that needs to be addressed when we talk about county centers. I want to talk about our attitude towards police officers as citizens of this country. We need to look at them and appreciate that they are doing what we would have done individually, and that is to provide security for ourselves, our children, our properties, and our country. What we need to do, because I hear a lot, Mr. Speaker, when some groups call some social movements, we are addressing the police as if they are the enemies of progress, and they address the police as the impediment of freedom. I wish to use this opportunity that as we think about supporting them, we must change our attitude towards police. After independence, we used to think of police being the force of colonial masters. And when we see them, we saw them at that time, during our time, when we were young, we saw police as enemies because they represented a regime that oppressed us. But we are an independent country. We must be proud of our country. What we see in the global north, the way they respect their police in their time and when in time of duty, as they fulfill their roles, they are respected as they implement the law. So let us keep also to the line of taking the pride of being proud of our own country and respect the law. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Thank you.
The MP for Kenya South, Gideon Kimayo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. And I appreciate the Member of Parliament from Suna West, Honorable Masara, for thinking about our police officers. Article 43 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, guarantees all citizens of this country the right to health. Mr. Speaker, our police officers work in very hostile environment, which at times brings issues even of depression and the rest. You find that their housing is not adequate. You find the kind of salary also that they receive is also not adequate. You look at their working equipment, the vehicles they are using and the rest, is not sufficient. Beyond this also, you see, they are posted to environment which, it's a disciplined force. They don't have an option, but they are there to serve the country. So the introduction of this bill is in a small way appreciating our men and women in the police service. And this bill, which seeks to amend Article Section 10 and 12 of the Police Service Police Commission Act, I support. If you look at other jurisdictions, for example, South Africa, for example, Canada, they have introduced the same that we are doing here. And
the Honorable Dr. Kimayo.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
I had to interrupt you.
Sorry.
But we have reached 6 o'clock, actually 6 and 1 minute. When this debate resumes again, you'll have 8 minutes more.
but we have a motion of adjournment at exactly 6 o'clock, and under the circumstances, I'm going to call on Honorable Ariko of Turkana South to move this motion of adjournment. The motion of adjournment, essentially, I'm sure you understand the rules. You will all contribute. There's no seconder. There's no question to be put at the end of it. It's for 1 hour and 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Proceed, the Honorable MP for Turkana South, Ariko.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. Speaker, for according me this opportunity to raise my voice on this matter of Tadanyang massacre. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of myself and my family, the people of Turkana South and the greater Turkana nation, I would like to extend my deep sympathies and condolences to the families of the bereaved in the Tadanyang massacre. May God bless their souls. Mr. Speaker, on 22nd February 2025, more than 20 fishermen lost their lives and a significant number reported missing following an ambush by suspected Ethiopian militia, popularly known as Dasanach in Tadanyang, Turkana County. The militia targeted fishermen who were unarmed as they were fishing at a place known as Lope Mukat and Atira near River Homo. Mr. Speaker, it is reported that during the incident, there was intermittent network blackout within the area that interfered communication, hence delayed rescue of the residents. It should be noted that Dasanach is an Ethiopian community living in Tadanyang area and share the same economic activities with the Turkana people. Tadanyang is situated at the shores of Lake Turkana on the northern side and very close to the Kenyan-Ethiopian border, and has faced perennial conflicts and insecurity over the years. The first incident that we can account for happened in 2011. As per the government records, remember, Mr. Speaker, government records may not be true. They normally understate the numbers. In 2011, 43 people were killed by the militia. And again in 2020, Merile bandits, suspected to be from Omo in Ethiopia, attacked residents again in Tadanyang with an intention of raiding livestock. These attacks have caused loss to lives and livelihoods. Again, in 2021, a massacre occurred where foreign militia killed 37 Turkana pastoralists inside Kenya territory. Remember again, Mr. Speaker, these figures are understated. Honorable Speaker, the security situation has severely disrupted essential services in the area, significantly impacting development in the region. The current attack has led to the loss of lives and property. You can imagine 16 boats were taken away, and they promised to return 5, which they have not yet returned today. Honorable Speaker, June, you can also remember the failure of the government, because the government has been ignoring some of these conflicts. Either the government has been ignoring, or it is always about smoothing strategy just to calm the situation. Remember again here in this house, we raised a statement, a member of parliament for Turkana Central raised a statement in June 2024, where Kenya Wildlife Service guards killed a fisherman while trying to make his end meet, and no action has been taken by the government. There is a need for the government to put measures in place to enhance economic activities under the blue economy. Mr. Speaker, the neighboring countries, communities have encroached the Kenyan land at the expense of peace. with the support of their authorities in all their endeavors. The Kenyan government has always ignored or just applied smoothing strategies in addressing such a critical matter. Mr. Speaker, I've identified a number of challenges this community is experiencing. And one of the challenges is the poor network connectivity within that particular area. Surveillance board for the